Good afternoon, and thank you for joining our program today. My name is Sophia Eccleston. I'm a commissioner on the Florida Commission on the Status of Women. I have served on the commission since 2018. The commission is a nonpartisan representative body of 22 volunteer women appointed by the Florida governor, members of the cabinet, Speaker of the House, and President of the Senate. The commission is focused on raising awareness of the issues impacting Florida women and providing a platform for those seeking information on the issues that affect women, girls, and families in our state. In doing so, we strive to be a resource for lawmakers, businesses, and residents so they have a better understanding of these important issues. Before the COVID-19 pandemic, we met with women in their communities all over the state of Florida and quickly learned that affordable housing was one of the 5 key issues of concern to them and their families. No matter where they were located, that was the issue. We know the pandemic has even made this issue worse. Data from the Florida Housing Coalition shows us that more than 1 in 4 households are considered housing cost burden. That is spending more than 30% of their household income on housing. The headlines tell us that the problem is only getting worse, especially in Florida, where housing costs are climbing. So that brings us to today, where we are pleased to be joined by a panel of experts from across the state to discuss this issue. So it is with great honor for me to introduce Florida Senator Kathleen Pasado of Naples. Senator Kathleen Pasado was elected to the Florida Senate in November 2016 after serving 6 years in the Florida House of Representatives. Senator Pasado received her law degree from Stetson University College of Law and built her practice around real estate and business law in Naples. She was in the first group of attorneys in the state to obtain a board certification in real estate law. Her peers elected her to serve as president of both the Collier County Bar Association and the Collier County Women's Bar Association. Senator Pasado served 2 terms on the Florida Commission on the Status of Women, and she's also a former chair of the commission. Senator Pasado, welcome.
Good morning. I'm Kathleen Pasado, Florida State Senator from District 28. Thank you for inviting me to be a part of this virtual Lead Lunch and Learn hosted by the Florida Commission on the Status of Women. We're here to talk about affordable housing today, but since this is a commission on the status of women in Florida, I wanted to take a minute to talk about the status of women today. COVID has had a real long-term impact on everyone, but especially women. Alarmingly, nearly 1.8 million women across the nation dropped out of the labor force around the pandemic. This could be a reflection of women's participation in the service industry or the fact that many women had to or choose to focus on their family during this crisis. Many have found it challenging to resume to work. Currently, women's participation in the workforce is at lowest it has been for decades. It's a flashback to the 80s. I say all of this because it's clear that women need our support now more than ever. I was a working mom, and it's not easy to work while raising your children. You want to make sure your children receive all the love and attention they deserve from you. And you also want your career to grow and thrive. It's a difficult balance for any working mom, but it's even harder when you layer on other challenges like access to quality education, good health care, and affordable housing. I believe it's the government's job to keep people safe, and that includes access to essential services. I also know that if we want our state to continue to grow and thrive, then we must ensure there are promising opportunities and a good quality of life for the people of Florida. We must ensure housing in Florida is available and affordable so that our workforce and our families have a safe place to live. In Florida, we use revenue collected from the documentary stamp tax to support the Sadowski Trust Fund. The fund supports the construction of affordable homes, repairs of older residences, and supports for first-time homebuyers. This past legislative session, we passed a bill, SB 2512, that modernizes the distribution of the documentary stamp tax revenue. It ensures taxpayer dollars are invested in 3 key areas that are important to safe and affordable housing for Floridians: affordable housing construction and maintenance and down payment assistance, wastewater treatment programs, and resiliency of our infrastructure. With this legislation, we invested more than $200 million this year to support state and local affordable housing programs. And that investment will grow as our economy grows and collection of documentary stamp tax grows. Affordable housing is important to our state, and through SB 2512, we made great improvements to the state law to ensure there is a steady stream of funding to support affordable housing and other critical infrastructure needs. We need to do more. The Sadowski Affordable Housing Trust Fund was established over 30 years ago, and times have changed. I believe we need to reconvene the coalition of community leaders, advocates, and organizations that came together 30 years ago to create the Affordable Housing Trust Fund programs. We need to take a deep dive into what has been working and what hasn't, and what our modern day workers' needs are and how we can address them, particularly our frontline workers, our first responders, teachers, and healthcare personnel. I am committed to working with my colleagues in the legislature to address these very important issues. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today, and I look forward to working with you in the years ahead.
Thank you, Senator Pasado. That was very enlightening. Thank you for sharing that with us. It is now my great honor to introduce our guest panelists. First up, we have Letitia Green Cobb of Jacksonville. She is a housing advocate and Georgia attorney. Latasha is the managing attorney of a nonprofit law firm that offers housing and financial education and counseling as well. Latasha began housing counseling during the height of the Great Recession in 2008. Since that time, she continues to educate and empower individuals to attain affordable housing. In July 2017, Governor Rick Scott appointed Latasha to the Florida Housing Finance Corporation as a low-income advocate. Prior to that appointment, Latasha served as a mayoral appointee for Jacksonville Housing Finance Authority. Latasha is a native of Jacksonville, Florida. She received her Juris Doctorate from Florida A&M University College of Law in Orlando. Latasha also has a Master of Education in Educational Technology from Strayer University. Welcome, Latasha. Next, we have Mandy Bardo of Fort Lauderdale. 15 years ago, she organized South Florida's first regional housing conference, first countywide housing needs assessment, and the first coalition of businesses, community groups, and government to address affordable housing. The efforts resulted in formation of the South Florida Community Land Trust, in which she has served as the executive director since 2010. Mandy holds a bachelor's from Carnegie Mellon University in Architecture and Urban Studies, where she also completed graduate coursework in public policy and management. She has been a leader on local issues, serves on numerous boards and committees, including most recently as chair of the Fort Lauderdale Affordable Housing Advisory Committee and on the board of the Community Reinvestment Alliance of South Florida. Thanks for joining us, Mandy. Finally, I would like to introduce Teresa Neo of Lakeland. Teresa serves as Planning and Housing Manager for the City of Lakeland. She works to bring new development into the city and has done some incredible things with affordable housing. She holds a Bachelor of Design from the University of Florida as well as a Master of Science in Architectural Studies from the University of Florida. So thank you all for joining us. I wanted to make sure we get all the introductions out of the way. So let's get started, ladies. Latasha, I'll start with you. I think for me, one of the most important thing is to start with a definition of what's the difference between affordable housing and low-income housing, and then we can get into the discussion, because I think sometimes that's where a lot of people get them confused. We can start with you, and we can move on to the next questions. Or Mandy, if you want to take a stab at it, or Teresa, we can do that as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Eccleston. I think you pretty much covered it in the opening in terms of, what cost burden means. So cost burden is at 40% and affordability is at 30%. So when you look at a person's gross income, you're looking at how is that gross income applied to household as well as utility costs. And so affordability is anything 30% or less. And of course, when we look at low income, we're looking at area median income. And so when you're at 60% or lower, and sometimes in some cases, it may be 80%. But, I think many times low income housing is stigmatized. And so it's often confused with affordable housing. So neither one should be stigmatized. I think everyone is in a situation for a period of time if they choose to make some changes.
Yeah, and I would add, I think that's a great way to start off, because a lot of times I hear people in conversations at commission meetings where folks get caught up in the definitions and never get to the solution. So I'm glad we're getting it out of the way now. But you're exactly right, Latasha. I mean, a lot of these definitions are related to median income and are defined for different programs. So 50% of the area median income is very low income, 80% is low income. And then you go up a little higher and people start saying moderate or middle income or workforce. And the one additional point that I wanted to make was, not only is there a stigma against low income, but there's additional confusion that's sometimes created between workforce and affordable. And it's somewhat of a misnomer, because we know most of our workforce is actually low income, right? But the perception and the definitions that are used these are more middle income folks. So I just wanted to put that out there, that when we are looking at the stigma, that we remember that even low income individuals, some of them might be on different welfare programs for different reasons, but the majority of them are actually part of our working poor in the state.
Teresa, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I did want to add that I think those definitions are important, particularly for people in local government that deal with development applications and requests for projects that are coming in with housing units. So a lot of times on the development side, we'll hear the developers refer to a project as being affordable or workforce housing, and it doesn't necessarily meet those definitions that we are bound to in terms of administering grant funds. And then they tend to use the term affordability quite a bit to try to get around those definitions. So yeah, I think that's key, is for everyone to understand that it is very much defined and based on income levels and statistics and economics of what area median income is. So that is something that we work within when we are dealing with developments coming in and wanting to get incentives for affordable housing.
And one of the things I know is the buzzwords, especially on the local government side, is more to talk about workforce housing, right? And a lot of times when they're dealing with the developers, they're using the term workforce housing rather than, because of the stigma, like you said, associated with low-income housing. So thank you, ladies. I wanted to make sure we get that out of the way, because there's always been so many different, definitions of the two. So let's talk about, and Mandy, I'll start with you. What are some of the things that your organization is doing to, either make an impact or addressing, the affordable housing issue that we're dealing with right now?
Yeah, thank you. And I can't help myself, I'm an architect by training, so if Kelly can help me with some of my slides, I'd love to show a few images of the projects that we've either completed or that we're working on. Perfect, thank you so much, Kelly. So before I talk about our organization and what we do, I want to share a few reasons about why we do what we do. So within the South Florida Community Land Trust, we have a couple core beliefs. And one of them is that everything important in our lives starts at home, right? Access to all the opportunities, whether it's a good job, a good school, healthy foods, it all starts at home. The second thing I want to point out is that cities and communities and their character and charm, those start first and foremost by the people that are living there. And so we have to start building housing for the people living and working in our communities. And then the final point about who we are and why we do what we do is that we have a core belief, and this is part of our mission as an organization, that anything we build must hit these 3 points. It must be quality, it must be sustainable into the future, and it must be affordable, not just now, but again, forever and into the future for future generations. So if you go to the next slide, there is just kind of a couple ways that we do what we do. And one of them is that we use the community land trust model. And so when we started 15 years ago, there was a group of folks that were probably kind of similar to those on the line today from all different industries, whether it was from local governments or from employers or from real estate professionals. And we got together and we asked, how do you improve housing affordability? And there was a lot of good ideas that were generated around how do we bring down the cost to build? How do we add subsidies to make it more affordable? But then there was only one that came up with how do we protect affordability? And the way in which we do that is through a community land trust. And I'll give you just the short definition so you can hear from the other speakers. But the community land trust model, our nonprofit maintains ownership of the land. And by doing that and separating the ownership, we're protecting the affordability for the long term and for future generations. So we're teaching our home buyers as they buy one of these homes, they can't flip it, they can't sell it for market rate because they didn't buy it for market rate. Instead, they've got to pass that opportunity on to somebody else. We're also starting to use that now in multifamily development with big projects, knowing that if we're putting all this government subsidy to make these units affordable, we've got to make sure that they stay that way and they don't change and get, again, flipped to a higher price down the road. So we're using that community land trust model, both on home ownership projects and on rental as ways to protect affordability. Thank you.
And I have a follow-up before we move on to the other ladies to touch on that. So, I want to make sure that my audience, our audience understand the community land trust model. So are you saying that a homeowner who wants to build a house, they're lease the land for a certain period of time? And can you say what that period of time is? And how, if they decide to sell or move, how does that work?
Yeah. So it's a 99-year ground lease. And if there's any attorneys on the line, there is a reason for that. I'm not going to go into the detail, but that's considered ownership and the longest term we can do.
Right.
So it's a 99-year ground lease. And that's really our partnership. It's written to protect everybody. It's written to protect the subsidy from local government, the lender, the homeowner, and our organization. And within that, there are certain restrictions that the home buyer agrees to. And the biggest one is the price in which they can resell it for. And each land trust has a little bit of a different price or formula that they put in there. For us, we say you can get 10% of the market appreciation in the home, but you also get everything you put down on your deposit, that you've paid down on your principal, and all the monthly savings you got because you're paying a reduced mortgage, which often is less than people are paying in rent right now.
Thank you. Thanks for clarifying that. Okay, we'll go to Teresa. Do you want to share some of the things that your organization is doing?
Sure. So as a local government, the city of Lakeland is what's called an entitlement community, which essentially means that we are allocated funds from HUD based on our population And we're also awarded State Housing Initiative Partnership Funds through the Florida Housing Finance Corporation. So those are the typical functions of our housing programs. And historically, those programs have focused on home ownership and rehabilitation of existing housing stock. But as was noted earlier about the highlighting of the need for affordable housing units within the state, our focus has shifted, and with the direction of our city commission, to really look at ways to produce new units within the city of Lakeland. So we've added to those typical housing programs and come up with some other things in terms of financial incentives for developers to hopefully incentivize them coming to Lakeland to seek out development projects here. So those financial incentives include impact fee waivers, which is not uncommon for affordable housing. We've also looked at how we can best leverage some of those grant funds that we receive with local general fund dollars and also funding through our community redevelopment agency to provide loans to developers and specifically multifamily developers at this time. In addition to the impact fee incentives and the loans, we also have established a land bank program where we have aggressively tried to get city and community redevelopment agency property that's been on the books, get that off the books. You know, the city's been bearing the cost of maintaining that property in many cases for a long period of time. So we have offered those up to builder developers that go through a pre-certification process. And then they are able to purchase those lots, and they do have to build an affordable home on the lot up to 120% of area median income. And at this time, we're actually in the process of entering into contracts with those builders. And so we don't have anything coming out of the ground yet, but anticipate to see that later this year.
Thank you. Latasha, what about you?
Thank you. I actually sit as the vice chair of Florida Housing Finance Corporation, which was created over 40 years ago, and we are the state's housing finance agency. So, you know, commonly known as a HFA that administers state and federal resources to help provide affordable homeownership and rental housing options to families throughout Florida. One of the examples of the resources that we use is the funding from the Sadowski Trust Fund. So Florida Housing Finance administers those monies. Since our inception, Florida Housing Finance has provided housing assistance to more than 2 million Floridians and households. We also, on the rental side, have funded approximately 300,000 multifamily units since 1992 through programs such as the State Housing Initiatives Partnership, which is commonly known as SHIP. Florida Housing Finance has provided $2.5 billion to local governments to assist in financing affordable homeownership and rental housing for lower income families at the local level since 1992. Also, some other programs that Florida Housing Finance have engaged in is such as dispersing billions of dollars of funding and assisting hundreds of thousands of families over 40 years with more than $9.6 billion provided towards homeownership first mortgage assistance since 2004 and more than $729 million in down payment assistance since 2004 as well. So Florida Housing Finance, we are, you know, doing a lot of the work throughout the state in terms of, you know, providing the support that the developers need and the households and individuals within our state need in order to achieve affordable homeownership.
Awesome. And, you know, I know you mentioned the Sadowski Fund, and I know it's, you know, that fund have been getting swept for so many years. And so I think recently there was some changes to that, but, you know, there's still a lot more work to be done. So, you know, we'll see what happens there. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk, you know, about COVID, because with COVID, not only are you seeing home prices go up, right? Which is good for people who have a home and is trying to sell a home, right? And because, and also a lot of people are now working remote. So if you live in New York, you can now move to Florida and buy a home. And so, you know, there's less inventory. So how do you guys see that affecting, you know, people trying to find affordable housing and even renters? You know, what are some of the issues that you guys are seeing right now? And I can start with you, Teresa.
Yeah. So on the administrative side and the staffing side, you know, being that local government that's administering those funds, the impact to the staff has been that we had to completely switch gears last year and deal with redirecting our attention to administering all of the COVID relief funds that were coming down through the federal or from the federal government and even down through state level. So because of that, we weren't able to focus as much as we would have liked to have in new programs to create new units. So I think that has an impact in that now there's going to be a delay with us getting some more units online in a time frame that we had thought would be sooner. And so I think looking forward now with some of the funds that we know that we are going to be receiving through the Home American Rescue Plan funding source, that will likely look to using some of those for tenant-based rental assistance, rapid rehousing, and new construction as well. So, you know, we know that there's been an impact to the community, and we're trying to be responsive in looking at how we deal with, you know, COVID first, but then also knowing that we have a longer-term problem to solve, and trying to find that balance in both creating new programs and then also trying to be reactive to these funds that are coming down to us.
So, and I have a follow-up question to you. So I sit on the Palm Beach County Homeless Advisory Board, and I remember having one of the representative from the school board district who came to speak to us about, you know, kids in the school who are homeless. And I remember, and I could be wrong on the number, but I think he said something like they had about $6 million, right, to spend on that issue that they got because of COVID and from the federal government. And I said, well, why can't we just build homes for all of those families that are homeless, right? So it just seems like $6 million, we could build a lot of homes. And I say that, and the reason I want to have a follow-up with you is, do you find obstacles, you know, you get all this money from the federal government, but do you find that there's a lot of restrictions in how you can spend that money, so it limits you to really have the impact that you want? Do you see that at that level?
With the COVID relief funds, there's actually, I think, quite a bit of flexibility built into that. You know, the traditional programs of, you know, home and ship, you know, there are restrictions obviously with that, but again, we've been learning how to work with those within those limitations, and then using our local funding to be able to get a little bit more flexibility. But you know, I think it's just, again, that we're having to be reactive here with these COVID funds, and then maybe not have much of a focus as we'd like on getting those new units in, particularly for families. So that's been a focus here too of our city commission, you know, knowing that there is that issue within the public school system, and how can we best get units, not only new units, but units that can accommodate families, the ones that are 2 bedrooms or greater in size. So that's been one of the challenges for us, is in getting developers to want to build to that model and not just do a 1-bedroom studio and you know, not address the need for families.
Awesome, thank you. Latasha, I'll go to you next.
I would, you know, definitely echo what Ms. Bayo has said, but also considering labor issues with COVID, because it does affect capacity in terms of when you're dealing with construction, or you're dealing with trying to get people into affordable housing. COVID has affected our workforce. And so how many people are able to be active in order to respond to the needs across the state? I do think that Florida has been extremely fortunate to have had the breadth and depth of resources to respond but many times, capacity, becomes an issue. So early in the pandemic, and with an allocation from our governor, DeSantis, Florida Housing provided approximately $150 million to assist low and moderate income households to maintain housing stability and protect, the most vulnerable neighbors that we have here. Through this effort, the team at Florida Housing Finance was able to provide rental and mortgage assistance to tens of thousands of households by collaborating with local government housing offices, such as the SHIP programs, affordable housing developers, and numerous nonprofit partners that either assisted with providing direct support to these households or provided technical assistance to those administering those programs. Additionally, our state and local government partners have been able to stand up programs with other funds made available through the CARES Act and or the American Rescue Plan Act to assist individuals and families with rental arrears, mortgage forbearance, and provide housing counseling for COVID impacted households. But, we still get back to capacity. So, capital hasn't per se been a concern, but at times capacity is a concern because when people are exposed or are sick with COVID, then of course the ability to handle a lot of the concerns, it slows down a bit.
Thank you. And I know you touch on some of the things I want to get to later on and some of the things that we're doing, but I want to hear from Mandy on, how is, what is she seeing, with the COVID and, how it's impacting affordable housing right now.
Yeah, as this pandemic drags on for another year, there's a lot of different areas that it's, I think at the beginning, we were most concerned for our residents, right? Because we know with any disaster, it's the folks that are low income that are hit the hardest. And so one of the first things we did back in March to April of last year is we surveyed our residents, and I want to say about 80% said either they were already directly affected at work from COVID and layoffs, or they were anticipating some loss in income. And that's probably more than others because a lot of our residents are in the retail sector, or they might be small business owners, but they're doing things like hairdressers or house cleaning businesses. So a lot of that was shut down for a long time. We were really fortunate to have a lot of the local foundations step up and work with us early on to give direct relief to those residents. Then you're right, Latasha, the state stepped in and allowed existing programs to shift to rental assistance. And now there's a lot of money coming in from the federal government. And I want to share a resource for those listening. It's myflfamilies.com. And for those who are needing rental assistance, check it out. You can search it by county to see what funding's available. And there's a lot of money out there. And each county has different rules, but it can cover a lot of back rent and even a few months going forward. We were hoping that would be tied in to the eviction moratorium being lifted. So people would get the rental assistance, eviction moratorium's lifted, they've already paid up, right? But we know there's been kind of a mismatch in timing, which is definitely a concern for a lot of our renters. But then when you switch gears, I heard Teresa talk about housing production from the government side and not getting funding out and not focusing on that side of things, but also we've got just a backlog of anything that you're looking to buy, whether you're looking to buy a car, a couch, or copper for a house. It takes a lot longer to get in those supplies. And so we're seeing timing wise, projects having some delays ordering. I mean, it's everything from windows to lumber, you name it. There's been a price escalation and there's been a time delay. And we do know any developer on the line knows that time is money. And these are real numbers and are having real impact. So, that along with the demand that you mentioned with people moving here, I mean, the costs are just rising up and up and up. And while it seems counter, you'd think costs would go down in a major crisis situation. Costs are just escalating in every direction right now.
Again, I think part of that is, people are finally spending time in their home and everyone's doing remodel. Hey, I'm guilty of it, right? And so that demand is just driving up the cost. And so imagine, what what it's like for someone who is just trying to find, a place to call home. They don't have 3-4 months that they want to wait for materials to come in. They want to find a place, right away. So ladies, I know that, we've been talking about the issue, and I want to turn to something a little bit more positive. If we can just touch on some of the things that's happening in the state, right? Either on the state level or the local level, different organizations. What are some of the things that, is happening that are helping affordable housing? I know, for example, in Palm Beach County, they have, for renters, they have so much money from the COVID relief that, they can help people who are struggling paying their mortgages or their rent. There's resources. So, let's talk about some of the, the good things that are happening to help this issue in the state. And Latasha, I can start with you from the finance level, or with an organization that, you're working with. What are some of the things that they're doing?
So for families that are looking to become homeowners, Florida Housing Finance offers a variety of 30-year fixed rate first mortgage loans and up to $10,000 in down payment and closing cost assistance programs. Those interested should visit our website, and you can find that at Florida, spelled out FLORIDA, housing, HOUSING.org. And we ask that you click on the Home Buyer Programs wizard for more information on how to start the home buying process, and contact one of our over 250 trained participating lenders. As for the rental side, families looking for affordable rental housing throughout the state that visits their, that fits their needs, income, can visit our affordable housing locator, Florida, housingsearch.org. That link to search affordable rental options is also on the home page of Florida Housing Finance's website. So we do have options available for homeowners as well as renters who are looking for affordable options.
Thank you. And Teresa, we'll go to you.
Yeah. So I mentioned earlier about with COVID, the local government having to be reactive, and maybe a better word to choose would be nimble. So we've had to learn how to do things differently and more quickly. And to that end, even though we are, in the instance of the Home American Rescue Plan Fund waiting for HUD to release its rules, we are ahead of that, looking at what do we want to focus on, knowing that we do have people who are struggling with their rent, struggling finding units. And so again, to that end, we're looking at doing some things that we haven't done before, that tenant-based rental assistance, to allow people to move into market rate units, which we have a lot under construction right now. I know within this region, so I'm imagining it's the same throughout the state, trying to partner with some not-for-profits to do some additional rapid rehousing programs. And again, on the new construction side, we're going to keep on with that. We've got to increase the number of units. So aside from knowing what the deficiencies are with, construction costs and supplies, we also have this increasing population. Everyone wants to come here to Florida. And so we know, going out 10 years from now, what our population projections are, and we have to get ahead of that. We have to, plan for that increasing population, and deal with an existing problem, so it's not as as much of an issue 10 years from now. So again, with that, looking at different programs, and on the new construction side, just continuing to leverage our funds to best be able to incentivize developers to come to Lakeland. We've so far been looking at multifamily. We're going to be looking at ways now to get some additional single family units here, so that we do have a good mix and variety of housing choices, because we know that that also plays into what people find is affordable in terms of what they can afford to either rent or purchase in terms of a housing unit. And so there's some of the things that we're doing, we'll continue to do. I would also say that on the policy side, We know that there are some things that we can be doing differently, and so we'll look to changing policies where needed. As an example, right now with our zoning code, we are making changes to allow for the use of mobile homes and tiny homes that would be categorized as RVs, for example, just to get other options out there for people to consider, especially in the area that we're in. Those are housing units that are not uncommon. And again, with stigma, I think there's usually a stigma when you say a mobile home, it's, manufactured home. So we're really just working to increase supply and variety of housing types.
Thank you. Mandy?
Yeah, so we're a land trust, so I'm going to focus on one piece, which is land, right? That's where you start if you're building anything new. And there's a couple of things we're doing. One is we are trying to partner with local governments or nonprofits or faith-based groups to get property and start using public land for public good. So there's been a big push in advocacy around that here in South Florida. And then the second thing we've done is we've realized it's a really competitive market, and we've got to act like every other cash investor in this market. So we've established what we've called an Accelerator Fund, and we've gotten some seed capital from Citibank to the tune of $700,000 so that we can start buying land and not hold that long term, but hold it while we assemble financing to build on it. And then the third thing that we've done is we're trying to be a little more strategic and targeted. We cover a really big region in South Florida, and I'll joke with some of my national colleagues. There's a statewide group in Delaware. I'm like, my region's bigger than your whole state, right? So we're trying to target areas in particular that we can build affordable, resilient communities near transit. So those are areas on higher ground, close to public transportation. And we've received an initial investment of $5 million from JP Morgan Chase through our Housing Link initiative. And we're partnering with some local CDFIs like Solar Energy Loan Fund and the Florida Community Loan Fund and Enterprise to be able to buy those properties and build new units that will ultimately put in the land trust to preserve affordability. And we've got some aggressive goals. So we've got sites under control right now that once we assemble the financing to build would yield about 450 units in the region.
Awesome. So ladies, I have one last question, and all of you can take it or some of you can take it. So we talk about things that the government is doing, that organizations are doing, local government, state government. But I always like to bring it back home, right? I like to bring it back to the people. And we have, people who are watching who may not necessarily need affordable housing, but may be landlords or may be homeowners or maybe, have investment properties, or you may have people who need affordable housing. What is one thing that what advice that you would give? What are some of the things that they can do to help with this issue, right? One thing that someone who is looking for affordable housing, or someone who may have a house that is affordable housing that they want to sell or rent, what is one takeaway for them? Like, if you want to help this issue, what can you do? Who would like to take that? Let's start. Go ahead, Teresa.
If there are units available, so we get asked that all the time, where is there a list of available units? And it's very hard to track that, especially for those that are not income restricted and have some type of government assistance where they have to be tracked. So I would say that in those instances, those individuals should reach out to the housing office at their local government and see what potential there is for creating some type of consolidated list of available units, and then to see whether or not they want to themselves become an affordable housing developer and commit to having income restricted properties. So that's one thing that I would offer for those who may have the properties. And then for those who have a general interest, just advocacy. So, every year there's that fight with the Sadowski funds, right? So it's usually those who are in the business that are being the ones to advocate. And it, because this is something that impacts every community, throughout this country, people really need to become involved and understand the issue and reach out to their legislators and let them know that they support the fund date and the programs for affordable housing.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you very much. Natasha, did you want to say something?
I actually would echo what she said entirely, because it is truly a concern there. Definitely, if we were able to create some type of, inventory to be able to know what is available out there, because there is a sincere, concern when you're now currently trying to look for a property and is selling beyond the list or the appraised value. And so many borrowers, especially those that possibly cost burden or threatening not to be able to afford housing, just don't have the cash to compete with those type of borrowers. So, in terms of what could we do to address that issue, that's a challenge that we still need to work on. But definitely having an idea of what type of inventory is available, and encouraging developers to take on these worthy products to create more inventory, so that we are able to address the migration that's happening within our state, the people that are coming here because we're such a wonderful state to be a part of. But it's just definitely going to take a collaborative effort. Several, the private sector as well as the public sector, as well as government coming together and trying to make it better for all our residents throughout our state.
Thank you. Mandy, anything you want to add from a land?
Yeah, I would maybe speak to some of the folks that are looking to become homeowners, because I know it's a really, really hard time right now. And you got to be lucky to get it, right? So I know there's some listings that'll go up on a Thursday, there's an open house on a Saturday, and it's gone by Sunday. And I would just say that kind of luck favors the prepared. So if there's a home buyer class, take it. If you need to prepare your credit, start doing it now. Get your files organized and ready to go. If you think you're ready to buy a home, get that pre-approval. These are all things you're going to need before you find that right house. So make sure you've taken all those steps, you're ready to go. And when that right house comes, fingers crossed that you'll be the lucky one that gets it.
Awesome. Well, ladies, this is...
Well, Commissioner,
go ahead.
Yeah, Commissioner, I wanted to add, if they were willing to go to a HUD-approved housing counselor who will work with them on pre-purchase or rental, counseling in order to find affordability. So, that's a great resource that we have that is often underutilized. And now, our HUD counselors are nationally certified. So, they clearly know, how to assist the homeowners and the renters. So utilize that.
Great, awesome. Well, ladies, this has been really an informative session, and I know that our viewers will definitely take away some really important nuggets from this conversation. So thank you, ladies, for taking your time to participate in this event and supporting the Florida Commission on the Status of Women. On behalf of the Commission, I say thank you. I know that this is definitely going to be helpful to a lot of the women in the state of Florida. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.